Assalamu alaikum. I am Amina Haider, Lecturer Institute of Business Studies. This is my second screencast for the course Business Research Method, and the topic for discussion in today's session is research variable and its types. The topic that we are going to discuss today includes what is variable, nature of variable, types of variables. That includes independent variable, dependent variable, moderating variable, and mediating variable. So moving towards our first topic, that is what is variable. Variable is a concept. Concepts are general notion or ideas that occur in mind of people, and using those ideas they try to predict or they try to explain a phenomena. So a variable is a concept that can vary. Variable is anything that can take on different or varying values. For example, income, motivation, exam score, etc. So concept that can vary and can be described in measurable terms. Measurement is assigning number or symbols to phenomena. Measurement can be done on a scale, especially if you are conducting a quantitative research. So the values on the scale corresponds to presence of properties of concept under discussion. It may change from group to group, person to person, or even within one person. We will try to explain this phenomena through an example. Suppose a course instructor asks her class of 50 students to complete a quiz. Here some students perform better than others. The instructor actually doesn't know the exact answer, but she assumed that it might be because of two reasons. Number one, some students are spending more time revising their test. Number two, some students are naturally more intelligent than others. So the instructor, taking into account the revision time and the intelligence of students, she studies its effect on test performance. Test marks that can be measured from 0 to 50 or whatever. Revision time that can be determined by how much time the student spends on revising the lecture, and intelligence that can be determined through their IQ score. So like we said, it's a concept that can be measured. So in a nutshell, a variable is the characteristic of an individual. It could be a group, it could be an environment, that entirely depends what is of interest in that research study. So variable characteristics are derived from the context of the research. Once the general topic has been identified, the researcher then need to identify the key variable of interest for the study. So the next topic is nature of variable. Nature of variable is assumed to be quantitative and categorical or qualitative. Quantitative variable means that variable that vary in amount or degree but not in kind or types. For example, length, height, score, age, these all are the example of quantitative variable. For example, age can take different values for different people or for the same people at different times. The next is categorical variable. Categorical variables are those variables that vary in kind but not in degree or amount. For example, eye color, gender, religion, etc. Eye color. Like we said that these variables can vary in kind. So there could be a number of different person with different eye colors, but it doesn't make sense to mention it in amount or in degree or in value terms. Similarly, gender can be explained in different kinds like male and female, but it doesn't make any sense to mention it in degrees or in value terms. Similarly, religion, we cannot term the degree of a person's faith in value terms, in amount. So categorical variable, they do not depict the difference in amount, but they just depict the difference. The next topic include the types of variables. This picture is just to explain the variable phenomena in a fun way. It is depicting the relationship between independent and dependent variable. When independent variable is saying that nothing you can do to affect me, and dependent variable saying that some things you do affects me. We will try to understand this relationship in the upcoming slides. So moving back towards our topics, dependent variable. Dependent variable is of primary interest to the researcher. The goal of the research project is to understand, predict, or explain the variability of this variable. Dependent variable is of primary interest to the researcher. This variable is affected by another variable. So we call this variable the response variable. Manipulating a change in another variable brings a change in dependent variable. And that change in dependent variable is what the researcher tried to measure using all his fancy techniques. For example, advertisement bring a change in sale. So sale is a dependent variable. Bringing a change in another variable, that is advertisement, brings a change in sales, that is dependent variable. Another example is eating ice cream leads to fever in kids. So fever is dependent variable. It's occurring or is happening because of another variable, that is ice cream. Independent variable. Independent variable is the one that influences the dependent variable in either positive or negative way. So, independent variable, we can call it an action variable. This variable influence the change in dependent variable, and this change is either in positive terms or in negative terms. By this we mean that in the previous session, in the previous example, when we said that advertisement could bring a change in sale, advertisement could bring a change in sale means that. So moving towards independent variable, Independent variable is the one that influences the dependent variable in either positive or negative way. Sometimes independent variable is also called the action variable, because when we manipulate independent variable, we can bring a change in dependent variable, and that change could be in positive way or in negative way. For example, like earlier we said that advertisement improves sales. So advertisement, bringing a change in advertisement would actually bring a change in sale. So advertisement is the independent variable and sale is the dependent variable. So in a negative way could be explained that when you try to increase the working hours of employees, the motivation level of the employee is decreased. So increase in working hour would bring a decrease in motivation level of the employees. The condition to experimental group, which is under control, direction or manipulation of the researcher. You people would remember a management theory, Hawthorne studies, that we discussed in Principle of Management course. The researcher changed certain parameters like room color, the room temperature, the working hours, and then he tried to study the effect on workers' productivity. So here, worker productivity is the dependent variable. It is influenced by independent variable, that is the different variables that we change or manipulated are the independent variable. This is the pictorial representation of independent and dependent variable. We can see that independent variable is the cause variable and dependent variable is actually the effect variable, or we can say the action variable and the outcome variable, the stimuli and its response. So how much then we see that manipulated and measured independent variable can be manipulated, and how much degree of change in independent variable brings a change in dependent variable. This change in dependent and independent variable is what the researchers is interested in. Now we will go through a number of examples to understand this phenomena. The statement is how stress affects the mental state of human beings. So it actually denotes that stress is actually a variable that is affecting the mental state of human being. So independent variable is stress and dependent variable in this example is the mental state of human beings. So moving towards another example. Promotion affects employees' motivation. Promotion is the independent variable and dependent variable is the employee motivation. More promotion would leads to more motivated employees. So bringing a change in promotion variable would actually affect the motivation of the employees. Another example is research studies indicate that successful new product development has an influence on stock market prices of the company. That is, the more successful new product turns out to be, the higher will be the stock market price of the firm. So this actually indicates that better the new product of the firm is, the better it will influence the stock market prices. So here the independent variable is new product development and dependent variable is the stock market price of the firm. So moving towards another example, a manager believes that good supervision and training would increase the production level of workers. So the more closely a manager supervises the worker, and the more better training facility if provided to worker would actually increase their productivity. So here the independent variable are good supervision and training, and dependent variable is the productivity. So next example is, a consultant is of the opinion that much benefit would occur by buying and selling at the appropriate times in a financial environment where the stocks are volatile. So that means that if you buy and sell stocks at right time, that would help you have an increased profit margin. So here buying and selling are the independent variable, and dependent variable is the profit margin or the benefit or the gain you are incurring. Moderating variable. We will understand this variable through the definition, then we will move towards its pictorial representation and then explain it through an example. So moderating variable is the one that affects the direction and or strength of relationship between independent and dependent variable. So moderating variable is the one that modify the relationship between dependent variable and independent variable. Researcher actually believes that this variable may affect the relationship between independent and dependent variable. The objective of moderating variable is to measure the strength of the relationship between independent variable and the dependent variable. So here is the pictorial representation of moderating variable. In this pictorial representation, we see the relationship between a dependent variable and independent variable that is modified by including a third variable, that is the moderating variable. We would explain it through an example. For example, the quality of training increases the performance of worker if they are willing to learn. Quality of training. Quality of training can be taken as independent variable. Keep this pictorial representation in front and see. The quality of training can be taken as independent variable. Worker performance can be taken as dependent variable. And this relationship can be modified by taking growth need of employee as moderating variable. That means that not all employees of the organization are conscious about their growth. Those who want to grow, they will be focusing more on their training so that their performance can be improved. So consciousness about growth is the moderating variable. That is modifying, that is strengthening the relationship between the quality of training, that is independent variable, and worker performance, that is the dependent variable. So moving towards the example of moderating variable, we will read the statement and then we will try to understand the moderating variable. It has been found that there is a relationship between the availability of reference manuals that manufacturing employee have access to and the product reject. That is, when workers follow the procedures laid down in the manual, they are able to manufacture products that are flawless. So firstly, we see that the availability of reference manual have an effect on the product reject. So here the availability of reference manual is the independent variable, and the number of rejects would denote the dependent variable. The more easily the reference manual is available to the employees and they actually follow it, the number of product rejects would actually decrease. So explain in terms of moderating variable. Availability of reference manual is the independent variable, number of rejects is dependent variable, and then we include the third variable, that is the moderating variable, and it is interest and inclination. Although the relationship is true in general for all workers, but it's not true for workers who are not using the manual every time they need it. So thus the interest and inclination of worker towards manual is a moderating variable because it's strengthening the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable. So moving towards the mediating variable. Mediating variable is one that occurs between the dependent and independent variable. It is caused by independent variable and is itself a cause of dependent variable. In simple words, mediating variable are actually the middleman between independent and dependent variable. So it explains the relationship between dependent and independent variable. Independent variable is not directly influencing dependent variable, but independent variable is indirectly influencing dependent variable through a mediating variable. So the objectivity of a mediating variable is to explain the relationship between. In moderating variable, we said that it modifies the relationship between independent and dependent variable. But here, the mediating variable is explaining the relationship between independent variable and dependent variable. So it's actually the Y factor between independent variable and dependent variable. So moving towards the pictorial representation of mediating variable, we see that independent variable is affecting dependent variable but not directly through the mediating variable, through the intervening variable. We will explain it like, for example, in a restaurant, the pizza taste or the pizza taste, the service speed, and the waiter courtesy are actually the three factors that increases customer loyalty. So customer loyalty is the dependent variable. Pizza taste, service speediness, waiter courtesy, these are the independent variable. So these factor actually improves the customer loyalty. But what is the reason for that? What is the Y factor? And the Y factor would be the mediating variable, because pizza taste, service speediness, waiter courtesy improve customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is the mediating variable, the middleman between customer loyalty. So customer satisfaction would then increase the customer loyalty. Example of mediating variable. The statement is, training helped the worker to improve their job performance. So training is the independent variable. Job performance is the dependent variable. Training, the more the workers are trained, the better they would actually perform. So explaining it in terms of mediating variable, we see that what is the Y factor? What is the Y factor between training and job performance? So training improves learning and learning improves job performance. So learning is the Y factor between independent variable and dependent variable, the middleman between independent and dependent variable. That is the reference slide for today's session. That's it for today. Thank you for listening.